All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the call. Super glad you're here today. So, I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about lying, embellishing, and dishonesty. Um, there's a lot of reasons why a person might lie. A lot of reasons. And, we label it bad behavior, though I really don't think that that's necessarily true. And I think that when we label things as bad, or a lot of labeling, I mean, sometimes in some situations, labeling is helpful. It helps us to see things with a clearer picture for sure. Um, and labeling also can shut down a clearer perspective of that picture if we're attaching a lot of negative connotations to it. Um, so I think just kind of go down the list of the reasons why somebody might be dishonest. Um, One of the reasons why somebody, particularly a child, might be dishonest, if they're just kind of telling stories, if they're making things sound a little more grandiose. Growing up, I had this friend, he was so hilarious. Like, he would tell his stories, and like the first time he told his story, it would be pretty close to unembellished upon, right? But once the story had been around for a while, like, the details were completely different. Though the core story was very true, um, the details got more and more and more outrageous. And one thing I will say about this person, and that I've seen over and over again with so many other people who kind of embellish to the point where their story becomes untrue. And even though the core story might be based in facts and reality, all the details around it have become so extravagant that the story itself isn't holding very much truth anymore. And one thing I'll say about those people is that those are storytellers. Those are our mystics. Those are our people who, like, they're artists. Those are our people who create, excuse me, those are our people who create wild and fun fantasies and write books and create video games, and they're poets and writers and all of these other things. So if we're managing a kiddo who likes to embellish a lot, who adds details to their story that make it more colorful, more exciting, more entertaining, honestly, I'd say lean into that. Absolutely be supportive of it as long as the details of the story aren't hurting anybody. There really is no damage in that. And when we're constantly trying to hold somebody like that onto the path of truth, I'd say in air quotes, um, we're shutting down their creativity. We're shutting down that, like, pathway that can pull out all of these interesting details and embellish and add, and, like, that is a really deep intrinsic part of who, like, an artist is to be able to reach into the depths of colorful, exciting things that exist within their brain. And again, as long as it's not hurting anybody, there's no real point in constantly calling this out. And I don't tend to think that people like this have any problems discerning their embellished fantasies from reality. I think they're just really enjoying telling their story, and they have so many colorful details around it. Um, so moving on to some other reasons why people might lie. I wanted to cover that one first because it's a little less nuanced and it's actually really fun and beautiful. I quite enjoy it a lot. So, um, there's other reasons why a person might be dishonest. Another one that's not incredibly nuanced and is, fairly easy to convey is a lot of times that people will be dishonest just because the thing that they're talking about creates so much shame for them. They don't want to share with you, um, or maybe with anybody. Maybe the thing that happened was so personal that they just don't know what or where or who would be a safe place to share that with. And that one doesn't really reflect on you or the relationship that you have with your kiddo or anything like that. That's just whatever the thing is, there's so much pain and shame around it that um it's just hard for a person to express it, and I know that as adults even, we have things that happen, that occur that, we might tell to somebody that we're incredibly close with or to a professional that we do work with, and some things even that happen, like, we're not even super comfortable talking to, like, professionals about it or our best friends, and, um, some things we might feel comfortable talking to one person about, but not another person. And again, I mean, yeah, connection and trust and safety in a relationship can help a person be more forthcoming in those situations. But again, depending on the context of what they're talking about or being dishonest about, it might be really hard for them to even just get close to the subject and have that conversation with anybody. Um, so if you feel like you're dealing with something like that with your kiddos, I guess, trying to be that safe person yourself or create that safety, but there's some things like that we'd never want to tell our mom. Like there's some things that and I love and trust my mom and I don't really think my mom would like shame me or hurt me or put me down and at least not intentionally, right? Um but there's just some things that she's not the person, she's not the move. And that's okay. Um, Having safe people for our kiddos to talk to who aren't us, you know, um, allowing them space to have relationships with other safe adults or, always getting our kids, professional people to talk to can always be a really helpful tool for us. Um, so then moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about like that which is a little bit more nuanced. It's like sometimes, even with the best of intentions, we can unintentionally create some kind of unsafety, some kind of disconnect, or you know, and I want to be careful talking about this because I don't want to blame. Like honesty is honesty is a piece of a healthy relationship. Being able to be honest with somebody is a piece of a healthy relationship. Now, again, there's the other things that I talked about first, which aren't really related to the relationship as much. Um, and in fact, if you have like that kiddo that loves to embellish and tell colorful stories, they may embellish and tell more colorful stories with you because you created safety in that relationship and they feel like that's a safe place to share their exciting stories without like being constantly challenged or judged on their storytelling. Um, However, it's really easy, particularly in the parent child relationship, to create an environment of unsafety for delivering your secrets or your hardships or being fully honest and forthcoming with certain things. And the reason I say that that's particularly so in the parent child relationship is because as parents, we hold all the power. You all know I talk about that a lot. And those power dynamics definitely are going to play into the level of safety that exists within your relationship with your kiddos. And also, as parents, with the best of intentions, trying to help our kids learn how to navigate the world, things like personal hygiene and friendships and responsibilities and all of these other things, and how that often comes out looking for our kids is it comes out looking like we're micromanaging their every single move. And if our kiddos are feeling micromanaged, that you're going to, adjust their behavior in this way and that way and be, manipulating their, and I don't use that word manipulation. Like when I say manipulating, I I don't mean it with a negative connotation. Um I should probably choose a different word there. When we're trying to modify their actions, I don't know, struggling with this word. The intention from the parent and the perspective that we're sitting at is that we're trying to help this child learn how to navigate the world, right? We want them to understand how to do all of these different things that help them to have a better quality of life. Um, so we're like, constantly trying to teach them how to do all of this stuff. And like I said, for a kiddo, that can feel a lot like they're being micromanaged. And if we're constantly like, do this and don't do that and do this way and don't do it that way and all of that other stuff, that actually creates, just simply by being a parent and holding all those power dynamics and trying to teach our kids how to get by in the world, it can create an unsafe environment for honesty. Because when we're always there managing the things that they're doing, it's going to be really hard for them to discern when they will be pleasing you. And if they're not pleasing you, then even if we're not like being mean or, punitive, we can still come across as disapproving. Excuse me. We may still be coming, I mean, we probably are still coming across as disapproving or judgmental or other things that don't really create a safe place for full honesty and transparency. Um, Now, again, as long as said dishonesty isn't directly hurtful to anyone, I wouldn't focus on it too much. You know, if you're feeling like your kiddo is struggling with sharing the truth, there's a few different things that we can do. Again, finding someone else that our kids can talk to safely, whether that's another trusted adult within our close circles or it's a professional, finding somebody that our kiddos do feel safe talking to is super important. We don't want our kiddos carrying around their pain without support. And certainly if, something bad has happened or anything like that, we really want our kiddos to feel safe and have a safe person that they can be forthcoming with and share the things with so that we can help to keep our kids safe. Um, and looking in on ourselves and doing our own work, holding ourselves accountable for the little ways in which we might be conveying things like judgment or shame. And like I said, these things can be super small. It's not like you have to directly say shame on you to shame somebody. In fact, shame on you is a rather extreme way to convey shame. Oftentimes, shame, I mean, and I remember growing up, my dad did shame with a look. Like you told him something that like he didn't approve of, and he'd just shoot you that look, and you felt it right down into your toes, like all the way from the top of your head to your toes. You're like, oh gosh, dad doesn't approve. And you'd kind of like I'd kind of recoil and be like, okay, not talking to him about that anymore. So, you know, shame can be conveyed incredibly easily, and creating safety and a lack of shame and like security and understanding, that's actually a lot harder, especially if here's the thing, like, if you're ashamed of something, if you're feeling uncomfortable about sharing something and you sense even the littlest bit of judgment, shame, blame, any of that stuff, you're going to recoil from it because you're already trying to manage those feelings, and that's just going to bring those feelings closer to the surface. So, um holding ourselves accountable and leaning into different ways that we can find connection with our kiddos, different ways that we can help them to really feel safe and secure in this relationship. And that doesn't mean that we can't dialogue about something, right? Cuz like if our kid brings us some piece of information, there's a good chance that we probably want to dialogue about that and discuss maybe the dangers of it or, whatever it is. However, um I would say that when we go into that aspect of it, it's it's a good idea to wait. Like, I'm not saying don't talk about the different details and the different things, don't break it down and like unpack it. What I'm saying is first, hear them out completely. Hear all of their thoughts that they want to share about it. Be super duper duper empathetic and really like hang on into the stages and phases of holding space, before you get anywhere near discussing details about it, and certainly anywhere near sharing any kinds of like disapproval or this is outside my values or any of that stuff with them. Like, sit in it with them for as long as it takes for their energy to shift around it until it feels like, they're feeling a little bit better about it, more comfortable with it before you want to go into any kind of discussion about it. And the really cool thing is that we I mean, we all have our built-in sense of like remorse and guilt and shame and all of that stuff, right? That's like all the foundation of what I was talking about here. Um, and so we think oftentimes that we need to go in there and tell them the benefits of and the dangers of and the this, that, and the other. But the truth is, if they were already having feelings around this thing that's hard enough to share, that's making it hard to share, we might find that they've already done the unpacking or a lot of the unpacking within themselves. And a lot of the things that we might have wanted to add or some of our like concerns that we might have wanted to throw in there, they've already considered them and thought about them. That's why they were feeling, like this, they didn't want to share because they were feeling the shame and the guilt already, because those are built in internal systems. And so when we hold that space, a lot of times we're just holding space for our children to work through the processes. And by the time we get to the point where we would have added something, they've already taken care of that. And there's not too much left for us to add except for, I love you and I'm here for you. And I really appreciate you feeling safe enough with me to come to me with whatever it is that you're going through, right? And then finally, the last thing I want to mention is that sometimes stories don't match because of perspective, because we're not all looking in from the same angle. And when sometimes when you feel somebody is being dishonest, it is possible that their perspective is simply different than yours. They saw something different than you saw it. And so their perception of the way they're going to talk about it and the details and all of that is going to be fairly different than yours. So instead of doubling down on your point of view or trying to convince somebody that the way that you saw things were is exactly how it was, um, listen and listen to their perspective, lean into their perspective, and see what you can learn about the situation. One thing that I know to be very true, if you've ever looked at like, well, I studied sociology, and this was one thing that I got from sociology was eyewitness accounts can vary incredibly. One person, like just for example, one person might see a small brown rabbit crossing the road, and another person um might see a red fox crossing the road. And clearly one of these people, or maybe both, because maybe it was neither a rabbit or a fox, like maybe it was a possum, and I don't know. But eyewitness accounts can be much like this, and it's kind of like the whole like the blue dress thing. And there's been a bunch of them along the way that we see on social media that really show you how different perspectives. And yeah, the dress is blue, I think, but some people see it as gold, and when they see it as gold, it really looks gold to them. I don't remember, that was a long time ago with the blue dress. But um sometimes it can simply be a perspective thing. And so instead of labeling it as dishonesty, it's really a good idea to hold space for the idea that somebody else actually did see something completely different than the way that you saw it. And that is okay. Like, and maybe one of you is wrong and maybe one of you is right. Maybe you're both wrong, or maybe you're both pretty spot on. You were just standing at different angles and picked up different pieces of what you witnessed. Um, so, at the end of the day, there really are a lot of reasons why somebody would be dishonest. And I don't really feel like lying at its core is incredibly nefarious. I feel like when our children feel like they need to hold secrets, they can be pretty dangerous secrets. And we don't want our children to be alone with any kind of a pain, and particularly not with anything that we could help them with, um, or that we need knowledge of so that we can protect them and things like that. But the lying itself, it's not necessarily nefarious. Some of it is completely innocent. Some of it is actually beautiful embellishment. And some of it is perspective. The really important thing is that we recognize that honesty is actually a gift, and it's the responsibility of the listener to create the safety in the relationship so that the speaker feels the comfort and the security and the safety to share that thing with the listener. And, they feel like that's a spot where their pains, their worries, the heavy things that they're carrying are going to land safely, and they're going to get the protection and love and care that they need when they come to you with this thing that they're carrying in their hearts. So hopefully this has all been helpful. I know I talked quite a long time. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to end the recording and get to the sharing portion of the call. I can't believe I talked about that topic for so long. Time just flew by. So, yeah, if anybody wants to go first or last or in the middle, anything like that, y'all can let me know however feels most comfortable to you. You can raise your hand, or you can type it in the chat or even unmute yourself. I'm just going to get this shut off here and we'll get started.